So hey everyone, welcome back to my channel. My name is Tanuj. So in this video we are going to start a brand new SQL course which is going to be the most practical and comprehensive course. I'm going to practically show you every single feature that we have within SQL, and this problem solving is going to be a real world, so that you can understand in a very deep, so that you can solve any kind of problems that you face as a SQL developer or a data analyst. I will be practically coding along and also be providing you certain challenges so that you can solve and become proficient at that particular feature which I'll be teaching, making this the most practical course. Okay, so this is going to be a no nonsense. I'm going to just talk straight to the point. So what I will be doing is I will theoretically explain you that particular feature using the whiteboard basically, followed by a practical example where you will understand very deep how exactly do we need to solve such kind of a query, okay, or a problem in SQL, and then a challenge will be provided so that you can test yourself whether you have fully familiarized with this concept. So that's going to be the workflow which I am going to follow within this course, so that you yourself learn by watching videos and also practically coding them. To make your learning easier, I have provided certain timestamps for this video so that you can navigate front and back to the very particular feature that you want to learn within SQL, and gain some practical and theoretical knowledge, as well as a test to challenge yourself if you know about that feature. However, I strongly recommend you to kindly follow along the course, not just by watching my videos, and also practically coding along, so that you will remember concepts forever. Also, please let me know your feedback after completing this course, whether was it worth your time and how exactly was your experience. You can just let me know in the comments. So with that said, let's get started. So in this course we will be focusing on using the Postgres database. So why we are choosing this? The first thing is this is the most powerful and widely used relational databases, right? It's a complete ecosystem, and it has advanced features like support for complex queries and data types, and also it has robust performance even with larger data sets, and also the main important thing is it is more scalable for real world applications. Okay, and by the way, this is completely open source and making it flexible and perfect for learning and for using it in professional terms. Okay, so that's why we'll be using Postgres, and of course you could have also used MySQL, but this is the most advanced and perfect for us to learn. Okay, because all the SQL, it resonates with the SQL standards that we actually have. Okay, and it supports all the features that it has inside it. Okay, so as I told, if you want to build any kind of large scale application, so you would always choose a database that is more reliable and it doesn't have any limitations. Okay, so this is the widely used, so that is why we are going to consider this. Okay, so with that clear, and also the GUI that we will be using is pgAdmin. Okay, so pgAdmin is also free and open source GUI which we can use to our advantage. Okay, just to visualize all the queries and perform all of the queries that we write inside this pgAdmin, which will directly interact with the Postgres SQL database. All right, so it can help you create and manage databases, and also you can visualize your schema and relationships, which I'll come to this later. And also we can execute SQL queries within a streamlined workflow. Okay, and also we will be dealing with a sample flight database. Okay, so it has all kinds of data related to flights. Okay, and having separate tables which having some relationship between them. So basically we have a schema which I'll come to that. So the primary database which we will be focusing on is on the topic flights. Okay, so basically it has all the different tables like flights, the tickets, the bookings, and seats, and all of that. Okay, which makes this perfectly complex and to learn. So this database will allow you to focus on mastering all the SQL concepts without worrying much about creating your own data and stuff. Okay, and I will be providing you all of the data so that me and you are in the same page, and we will be performing all the SQL queries on this one database. Okay, and also the schema just for your better understanding, and all of that you will be finding within the description of this video. So we are going to get started by just selecting few data within our database and going all the way up to advanced features that we can perform on this flights database. Okay, so it is a quite interesting database, and you will get to know so we can just solve some interesting problems like how many flights are there, how many passengers are went from this flight to this flight, and what time, and all about the seatings and stuff. Okay, it's going to be a really interesting one. So that's why I chose this database, so that you too can find it interesting and have a learning experience. And also the schema diagram, which you will also be finding within the video description. So it's just an image where you can just visualize our database. So with all of this, let's get started by taking the very first step by installing pgAdmin and also PostgreSQL and also the SQL server itself, which I will be showing you right now, and then get started from there on. And also I will show you how exactly you can import the given data, which you can find in the description, and how you can insert all of that data and within your Postgres database, and then you can perform your very first query. All right, so let's get started. So you can just go search for PostgreSQL download, and you can just go to this page for PostgreSQL, or there's another page which you can just go over there, that is this enterprisedb.com, and you can just download for whichever operating system that you are using. Currently I'm using Mac OS, so I will just go and download the latest version of this PostgreSQL. Okay, so if you just click on this, it will start the download. So it should start the download. So it is about 360 MB file. So let's wait for this to for this download to complete. So once your download is complete, you can just open this particular file. So I believe the same process is even for Windows as well, so you can just follow the same steps if you're using Windows also. So let's open this up. So saying open and providing your password. So once you give your password, so it should open another window. I probably click on next. So this is going to install the PostgreSQL server and as well as the GUI, that is pgAdmin. And once that's done, we can just click on next. And since I already have pgAdmin or the PostgreSQL server already installed, so it's giving me this message. So this will only just go ahead and upgrade it. So I will just click on next, and yeah, so once we do that, it's going to install. So let's wait for it. So once that's done, we can click on finish. So the installation process is complete. So if we open the pgAdmin the GUI, so it will look something like this. So we just need to give it some configuration, like giving the username and password. So let's wait for it to open. So once you have provided your username and password, so finally the interface would look something like this. Okay, so where we have like nested folders over here, and if you want to access all your databases and your tables, so we need to provide the password that you have given while installing the pgAdmin. Okay, so I'm just going to enter that. So once you enter that, it will display all of your databases over here. Okay, so it will be like a tree like format like this. So you can just navigate around different databases that you have, and currently I have 3. So in case your first time installing pgAdmin, so you will have no databases installed. So in case you are not able to install pgAdmin or PostgreSQL successfully, then you can just probably watch some take some help online or watch some YouTube video. I hope I'm sure that there will be some solution for anything. Okay, initially when I installed this, I also had some problems, but I just did some googling and saw some videos on YouTube, so I was able to figure that out. Okay, so I'm sure you will be able to figure that out. So with that out of our way, let's go ahead and import our database. Okay, so that is the Flash database, and perform our very first query, and then get started learning from there on. So once you download the database file which is given in the video description, so you will be once you extract it, you will be able to see a file called flight_database.sql. okay, so this is contains all the set of commands which is not important for us to know, but it will manage the data, and it will create all the tables and all its relationships. Okay, so this has like about 22 lakh lines of code, so this is indeed a very big file. So this file contains all the data that we need to play with, and all we just now need to do is just run this particular file within our pgAdmin. Okay, so this will import all the data within our database and then start performing queries on these. Okay, so once you download, you just need to locate the file where this particular SQL file locates. So it is in downloads folder in my case. Okay, so wherever you have saved it, you can just copy the path of this. So by right clicking on this and clicking on copy path. So once you do that, we can open the pgAdmin dashboard. So once you open your pgAdmin dashboard, it will look something like this. So you can just go to the your database and log in with your password. So once you log in, you will have access to all your databases over here. So we are going to create a new database for our flights DB. So we can right click on this, go to create and database. Okay, so we need to give this database a name. So I'm going to call this flights DB and click on save. So this is going to create a database for you, and it is an empty database with no schema or any tables inside it. So this is a time where we now need to import our data. So we can just right click on this flights DB and go to pSQL tool. So basically this is a tool where it is used to run any kind of an SQL file, okay, within this particular database. Okay, so make sure you right click on this and pSQL tool, otherwise it will run some other database, okay, if you have any. So here we just need to paste in our the absolute path that we copied for this flight database .sql file that we just downloaded. Okay, so we just need to prepend this particular path with I. Okay, so we just need to go to the start of this and just do I and put a backslash like this. Okay, and then we need to wrap this entire thing within quotes. Okay, so if you don't have any spaces, then that's fine, I guess. So if you have any kind of spaces in between your folder names, then we just need to wrap this in quotes. Sorry, this backslash has to come before I. So backslash I and then your path wrapped in quotes. Okay, so if I now run this, so you see that it is going to run all of the commands that are there within this file, and it is going to insert all the data inside your database. Okay, so once this is done, you see that everything is run successfully without any errors. So if there is any error, maybe there's some problem within your SQL files. So once you refresh, you will be able to see another schema next to the public called bookings. Okay, so this is basically our database. So when we expand this and we go to our tables, so these are all the tables that we have for the flights database. Okay, so we have a total of 8 tables. Okay, and we have a relationship map between them. Okay, so if you don't understand, I'll just come to that, what are the relationships. So these are the 8 tables that we have for this database. Okay, so I just want you to understand that there is a database and that contains tables, and each table will contain rows. Okay, rows of data, also columns. Okay, so this is basically how you can import data within pgAdmin. So now we can open our query tool where we can write in commands to execute queries within pgAdmin. Okay, so we can right click on this and go to we just need to click on query tool this time, not pSQL tool, and this will open like a text editor where we just need to write in commands. Okay, so the first and most basic commands when you get started to learn SQL is the select command, where you tell database that I want so and so rows and give me all of that from the particular table or the database. Okay, and make sure that you are within the flights database which we just created, and not any other database. Otherwise, if you try running queries there, it will give you rows from that database and not this one. Okay, so that's the main thing to keep in mind. And the first query is called as select. Okay, so you can write this command in either uppercase or lowercase. Okay, so the recommended way is writing uppercase. So we can just tell select, and if I want to select all the columns within a particular table, I can just click on star. Okay, now we need to tell SQL that from which table do we want to select all the rows, all the columns basically. So we write the from, and then let's say we want all the data from the flights. Okay, so we can say flights. Make sure you don't make a typo here, otherwise it will give an error. So to execute this particular query, we can just click on this run or click on F5 on your keyboard. Okay, to execute this particular command, and you see that we are given with a table of all the flights data. Okay, including all the columns and rows, since we haven't applied any more conditions over here, so that's why it's giving us all the data. So we have about I guess 10 columns, and we have about 33,000 rows. Okay, so this is giving us all the data since we haven't applied any condition over here. So if I want to select all the data from the bookings table, so if I replace this with bookings, and this is going to give us all the data with the bookings table. Okay, so we just have 3 columns and we have about 2,60,000 rows. Okay, for this bookings table, and if you want you can just play around this, and this is the first step of getting started. Okay, so I hope you got to know about the select command. So let's go back to the flights database, and instead of selecting all the columns, I can only select specific columns by just instead of the star, I can give the column name. Let's say I want to get all the flight IDs. Okay, so I just need to type in this column ID name. Okay, so without any spelling mistake, so flight underscore ID, and click on run. So this is going to fetch only the column with the name flight ID and return us all the rows over here. Okay, so we can also select multiple columns by separating the column names with a comma over here. Okay, so we can, let's say I want to also get the flight number along with the flight ID, so I can separate that with a comma and say flight number, the exact column name, and click on run. So you see that we get the flight column number also along with the ID. Okay, so this is how we can select any kind of like columns within a table. Okay, so now let's say I want to order a particular column. So let's say this departure airport, I want to order this in ascending order and return us all the rows. So we have another keyword called order by, so that is order and then by and then the column name. Okay, so that is departure airport. Okay, so there should be a space here, and now we run this file. You see that our departure airport is now all sorted. You see that it starts from A, so you see that this is all sorted by the departure airport. Okay, so this is how you can order by, and if you want this to be ordered by in the descending order, so we need to add in another keyword called DESC. Okay, so which stands for descending, and if I run this, you see that the last letter within the departure airport is now the first column. Okay, so it's all sorted by descending order, so by default it is ascending. Okay, so you don't have to add in ascending or something like that. So this is how you can order based on a particular column. Okay, so this is like all just the basics, still more advanced stuff is going to come. So we can also limit the number of columns along with these commands that we have given. Okay, so if let's say I want to limit to just 10 rows. Okay, so if I just run this, it is only going to give me 10 rows over here. Okay, so based on how much ever you type in, given a number here. So now let's say I want to get all the unique departure airport codes. Okay, so you see that there are a lot of duplicates here. I only want unique rows. Okay, so for that we have a keyword called distinct. Okay, so we can just wrap the star within the distinct keyword. So basically I want all the distinct ones, and so if you want only a particular column to be distinct values, so we can just pass in the column name inside this distinct function. Okay, so this is let's say departure airport, and let's run this file. So you see that these are all the unique ones. Okay, so if you have noticed, YKS was the airport which was appearing a lot of times, right? So now it is only limited to just once, and we get all the other ones. Okay, so if I just remove this limit and then make a query again, so we get all the unique departure airports. Okay, so this is the use of this distinct keyword, which is used to get all unique values. So now if I want to count the number of rows that are given within this particular query, I can use the count function. Okay, so I can just wrap the star within count. Okay, so we can use count over here, and once we run this, it will give us total number of records, so that is 33,121. Okay, so without doing this, and if I just run this, you see that it's the same 33,121. so these are the number of rows it will return us by counting it. Okay, so we can use a count function like that, and let's say I want to count this particular column, that is actual departure. Okay, so you see that there are a lot of null values over here, so if I want to count all the values that has some value inside it, so I can just specifically target this particular column and count the number of rows inside that. Okay, so I can just select actual departure and give this a run. So this will return us this particular column, and if I want to count the number of rows, I can just wrap this within the count function and run this. So now the number of rows is 16,000 because we had a lot of null values. Okay, so this is how you can count the number of rows within a given column, or everything. If you want to, like, you can put a star over here. So if you see carefully, this is a column name it returned, something called as count, and this is just one row with the number of rows that it has for this particular column. So if I want to, I can also rename this. I can use an alias, so that is AS. Okay, so I can just name this anything I want. So let's say number, and now if I just run this, so you see that this is changed to number. So I can just give this an alias of whatever the name I want instead of just this count over here. Okay, so I can also change this to let's say departures and run this, so this gets renamed to departures. Okay, so this is how you can use the count function to count the number of records within a column. Hope you understood till here all of this basic commands that we can use to perform queries. So I just have a simple challenge for you where these are the two questions which you can just try to solve on your own. So I have two questions. The first one is retrieve the top 10 unique airport codes. Okay, so it's by the column name airport code from the airports data table. Okay, so we have the airports data table over here and we need to order that in descending order of their codes. Okay, so you can just go ahead and try this out. And this is the second question. Count the total number of unique seat number values. So seat number is the column name within the seats table. So we have the seats table over here and we just need to count the number of unique seat values. Okay, not just seat numbers. So pause the video and give this a try. So let's solve the question number 1. So let us select the airport code from the airports data table. So from the airports data table. Alright, so if I just run this, so this will give us all the airport codes over here within the airports data table. So now I just need to order them in descending order. So how do I order them? So saying order by the airport code, and then we want that in descending order. So if I just run this, so all of them are now sorted in descending order. Okay, so we need to find the top 10, right? So we can use the limit operator over here and set this to 10. So we get 10 top unique airports. So we have another constraint, that is unique. Okay, so this has to be unique, so we can just wrap this within the distinct function. Okay, so this will give us all the unique values. So if I now run this, so these are all the unique ones. Okay, so that are sorted by descending order and these are a top 10. So if I just remove this 10, so the number of rows that we get is 104. So by the way, all of these are anyways unique. So just for a challenge, I have just given this to give it a distinct. So if there were duplicates, that would get neglected. Okay, so let's now solve the question number 2. Count the total number of unique seat number values in the seats table. So let us select seat number from the seats table. So okay, so this is a syntax error, so actually I need to comment this out. So to use comments, we can use double dash over here. Okay, so that will be treated as a comment, or also you can use command and slash or control slash if you're using Windows. So this is the query which we can run. So once we run this, so you see that these are all the seat numbers. Here the question says that count the total number of unique seat numbers. So we can just wrap this within the count function like so, and this will give us the number. So 1339. Okay, so they have asked you for unique ones, so we can just wrap this and wrap that in distinct and give this a run. So all of the seats are anyways unique, so it didn't make sense to use distinct here. So anyways they have asked in question, so we have done that. So we can also rename this particular column as, let's say, number of seats like this, and yeah, that gets renamed. So I hope you were able to solve the question number 1 and 2. So with that done, let's now move ahead. So now let us understand how can we filter data. Let's say I want to only get the flight ID of just number 1. Okay, so for that we have an operator in SQL called as where. Okay, so this is an operator which is used for filtering data and based on a particular condition. Okay, so here we write our condition over here where we say the column name flight underscore ID and set that equal to 1. Okay, so this will give us rows that match this particular condition. So now if I run this, so you see that I get the only one row which has the flight ID of 1, and yeah, so this is the particular row which we can filter out. Okay, so also I can find for the flight ID of, let's say, 10. So whatever the value you pass in, so if that matches, so it will return only that particular row. Okay, so we can also do some advanced filtering as well. So this is just basic ones. Let's say I want to get all the flights which is having an ID greater than 1000, let's say. Okay, so we can use the greater than operator instead of equal to, and then pass in the value. So that is 1000, and now if I run this, so I will get all of the flight IDs greater than 1000. You see that all of the flights are greater than 1000 over here. Okay, so also I can just check for lesser than 1000. So instead of greater than, I can put lesser than. Okay, so this is the operator which you can use, and you see that all of the values are now lesser than 1000. Okay, so we have about 1000 records. You can also verify within this total rows over here. Okay, so I can also filter them out by, like, let's say 100. So I get 100 rows because there are 100 flight IDs lesser than 100. Okay, so you see that I'm getting 99 over here, and because I'm not using the greater than or equal to, lesser than or equal to operator, so I can use an equal to also to equal to the value that we pass in. So now you see that we are getting 100 rows over here. Okay, so this is also applicable for greater than as well. Okay, so I hope you understood the greater than and lesser than operators, which is very basic. So now let us see another case where I check the status of every flight, whether they are arrived or they are delayed. Okay, so I just want to check for these two values, either they are arrived or delayed. So we can just write the condition inside this where and set this to status. So the column name called status, and we can use the or operator. Okay, so if you want to check between two values, so where the status is equal to, let's say, arrived. Okay, so this should be in the form of a string, and we now also check for the or status is equal to delayed, for example. Okay, so this is just a trivial one, and now if I run this, so make sure you use single quotes instead of double quotes, otherwise it will not work. So now if I run this, so you see that I will only get those records that are either arrived or delayed. Okay, so also I can use the AND operator. So again, this or can either be uppercase or lowercase, it still works the same. So let's say I want to check if the departure airport, let's say DME, and the arrival airport is LED. Okay, so let's also do that. So instead of using the or operator, we can use the AND operator to check if both the values are equal. Okay, so this is checks if any one are equal, so it will return that row. So if we provide a condition, two conditions where both are equal, only it will return only that. Okay, so if anyone fails, that will that will get rejected. So let's say I want to check for the departure airport and check for the value DME, and also the arrival airport, and replace this to LED. So now if I run this, so you see that I only get all those departure and arrival airports to only DME and LED. Okay, so if I put an OR, I get more records. So now I am getting 244. So OR will give us more records, right? So now if I play this, I get 4800. Okay, so so you see that now only these, either one of these two values will exist. So I hope you got to know about the AND or operator. So now you see that this actual departure column, so it has a lot of null values, right? So let's say I want to filter out all these null values. So what I can do is I can just put another where clause here, and we can now set the actual departure, and we can check if this is null or no. Okay, so we can say is null, like this. Okay, so now if I execute this, so it is giving me all of the values that contains null. Okay, so if I don't want null values, so we can put another operator just before this null, that is not null. Okay, so that makes sense in English words itself. So if I now run this, so it is going to give me all the actual departure values that are not null, as you see over here. Okay, so this is how you can filter out null values. So also I can check for a value between two numbers. Okay, so instead of this, let's go back to the flight ID, and let's say I want to get the flight IDs between 10 to 20. Okay, so flight ID between 10 and 20, like this. And now if I run this, so you see that we get all the flight IDs between 1 and 20, sorry, 10 and 20. Okay, so based on the number, it will give us, it will filter out the values. So this is the use of the between operator. So now let's say I have a list of departure airports. Okay, so I would just want to see all those rows that are there within my list of departure airports. For example, I have a list of, let's say, DME, VTO, SVO. So I want to check those rows that are there within that list. So for that we can use the in operator. So first we write the where, and we can use the in operator, and here we can pass in a list of values between common brackets. Okay, so here we can just pass in values in the form of a string with a comma separated. So let's say I want to check for let's say SVO, just an example. Okay, so let's choose SVX, and then let's say KZN. Okay, so now if I run this, so it is only going to return us all those values that are there within my list over here. Okay, so SVO is there, SVX is there, KZN is there. Okay, so I hope you got to know how to use the in operator, and of course we can cascade that with many more operators like the and, or, and also between. So we can also use multiple operators if you want. Let's say I want to put another condition here where the flight ID is less than 100. So I can cascade another operator here, and flight ID is less than, let's say, 100. So now if I run this, so I don't get any value. So let's say 1000, and still I don't get values. So basically it starts from 10,000. So you see that we can apply many more operators. Okay, and we can change them as well. So now let's say I want to get all the departure airports that starts with the letter J. Okay, so to get all those that starts with a letter, so we can use the again where, and select the column name departure airport. Now we use the like operator. Okay, so this is an operator where we can check if any value exists in the given record. Like let's say the letter J is existing within the given row. Okay, so we can use like this inside a string, and then pass in the letter J, and we say that and then we put a percentage symbol here saying that it should start with J, and I don't care anything after that. So it should start from J. So let's run this. So we see that we get all the departure airports that start from J. Okay, so let's say I want all the departure airports, like let's say any value is J. Okay, so now we have 261 records. So if I can also put a percentage symbol before that, which means that it should contain just the value J. I don't care where it starts from or ends from. So that's the use of this. So we wrap this with percentage symbols, and now if I run this, so you see that everywhere there is a letter J. All right, and now the number of records is increased to 2800. Okay, and now to check the length of the word, I can use underscores over here. Okay, so let's say I want to find all the departure airports that has just 2 letters in it. Okay, so we do not have any departure airports that starts with 2, but 3 exists. Okay, so you see that we get all the rows basically. So, and also we can check for 4 letters. So that would also work. Okay, so based on the number of elements within the string, so that will get filtered out. Okay, so now let's say I want to start from the letter B, and I don't care anything what is after it. So it should start from B, but it should have only 2 letters after that. Okay, so we see that all those, now if I run this basically, so I get all those departure airports that are 3-letter words and starts with B. Okay, so this is all about the basic filtering, okay, that we can perform on SQL queries, okay, by using the where operator and using the other operators like and, or, and like filter according to your requirements. All right, so now I just have a challenge for you where I'll just paste in the questions here. So these are the 5 challenge questions which you can try solving it. So you can pause the video and try this on your own. So now anyways, let's get started by solving the first one, and retrieve the flights that are departing from DME and arriving at LED. Okay, so we just need to now use the AND operator. Okay, so first let's select, so we select all from flights, and then put a where operator, and then set departure airport, and set that equal to DME, and make sure you use single quotes, and put the AND operator and use the arrival airport, and arrival airport set that to LED. So running this, so we see that all the airports that are departing from DME and arriving at LED. The question number 1 is solved. So now find the flights where the flight number starts with AA. Okay, so basically they're telling us to find all the flights that are American Airlines. Okay, so we can just do the same thing again here and put a where flight number like. So we can use the like operator that we can use to check if it starts with something. So a and a percentage symbol. So it should start from a and then anything after that. Okay, so now if I run this, so sorry, I just need to run this particular query and ignore this. So I can just select this and just click on run, so it will only execute the selected ones. Okay, so now if I run this, so I don't find anything that starts with a. Okay, so maybe it's a bad question, maybe this data doesn't even exist. So if I do a select star from flights, so none of the flights starts with a. Okay, so it all starts from pg. Maybe it's a bad question. So anyway, so we can, like, let's say change this to pg, and we can get all the flights that starts with pg. Okay, and we are getting again all of them actually starts with pg. Okay, so let me just comment this out. Okay, so now let's go to the third question. List all the flights that are scheduled to depart from this time to this time and along with the date. So basically they have given the timestamp and we need to check all the flights that are scheduled to depart between this. Okay, so we can again use the select star from flights, then we can use the where. So where the scheduled departure between, so we can use a between operator to check between two values. So we can just copy this and then paste it here, and this one. All right, so let's execute this, and you see all of the flights that are scheduled from 13th August. So that is from 12 to 13. Okay, so in that 1 hour how many flights are there? So we can just see all of them over here. Okay, so we have 55 flights over here. So now retrieve all the flights that are departing from any one of the following airports. Okay, so again we can use the like operator. So first let's put the where from which table, that is departure airports, and now we can use the in operator just as I told you and check for values between this common brackets. Okay, so we can pass in. Okay, now run this, and you see that all of the departure airports that starts either from one of these values. Okay, so that's verified. Find all the flights that are departing from DME with flight numbers containing 03 anywhere in the number. Okay, so these are basically chaining the operators which I just told you. So let's first select all from flights, and now we can use a where. First we select the departure airport and check for the value DME. So we can put an equals to operator and DME, and we also need to add in another operator, that is to check if the flight number contains 03 anywhere. Okay, and flight number like, and then pass in 03 and wrap that in percentage symbols like this, and we see that we get about 585 rows that contains 03 within their flight numbers. Okay, so yeah, so this is the final challenge. So if you have come till here and were able to solve all of this, then you are familiarized with the where operator, basically to filter any kind of data. Let us now understand what are aggregation functions. So basically they are functions that is used to perform some amount of calculation within a particular column. Okay, so we have already seen an aggregation function called count, right? So which is used to count the number of rows within a particular table, right? So we are going to explore other aggregation functions as well. Okay, so I guess this is not the right table to analyze aggregation functions. So now let's move on to the ticket flights table where we can perform some aggregation functions. So I can now select all from ticket flights. Okay, so here we have 4 columns, that is the ticket number, the flight ID, fare conditions, and the total amount for that particular ticket. Okay, so I've just split them out in multiple lines for easy understanding. So since there are a lot of rows over here, you see that there are about 10 lakh rows, so we are just going to limit them to just 100 rows and then work only with them. Okay, so that will just improve our performance. So just limiting it to 100. So now we just have 100 rows. So let's perform the very first aggregation function called as sum. So let us calculate the sum of all the tickets that we have within this table. So we can just use the sum function. So basically functions open and close with brackets before the keyword, and we just need to now specify the column name over here. Okay, so let's specify amount like this and give this a run. So this is the sum of all the ticket prices. So next we have is the average, which will calculate the average of all the ticket prices. Okay, so the keyword for that is avg, and now we give this a run. So you see that this is the average price, so that is about 19,000. Okay, so you see that there is a lot of decimal places after this point over here. Okay, so we can also round it off by using another keyword called as round. Okay, and we can just wrap this inside that, and we can also specify how many decimal places do we want to round this off. So I'm just going to specify 2 over here and give this a run. So this will round off to 2 decimal places. Okay, so this is all about the average function and how we can round that off. Now let's calculate the minimum and maximum ticket price. Okay, so for that we can use the min over here and then pass in the amount, so basically the column to be calculated. So now we can just check which is the minimum ticket, so that is 3000. Okay, so also we can check for the maximum by using max over here, so that will give us the maximum ticket price. Okay, so also we can rename this, we can provide aliases like this, so we can just say maximum price. Okay, so this gets renamed according to that. Okay, just as we saw for the count. Okay, so again if you want we can also count the number of amount the tickets basically, so which we already saw, which I'm not going to do over here. So these are the main top 5 aggregation functions which we will be using. So now I have a challenge. So find the average ticket price and the total revenue for tickets sold for flight ID 9907, and the second one is what is the total revenue, the lowest ticket price, and the number of tickets sold for the business class. Okay, so you can pause this video and try this on your own. Meanwhile I'm going to solve this particular question number 1. So find the average ticket price and the total revenue for the tickets sold for flight ID 9907. So first let us select all from the flights table, the ticket flights table. So select star from ticket flights. Alright, so now I just want the flight ID 9907. So let's put a where condition here, where flight ID is equal to 9907 and give this a run. So we get all the rows for flight ID 9907. So now we just need to calculate the average ticket price. So we can just put a average aggregation function, so and then pass in the amount column. Also they have asked the total revenue, right? So we can use the sum operator and then pass in amount as a column name. So if I run this, I get the average and the total, okay, for the flight ID 9907. So basically the total revenue and the ticket price. So for the second question, we need the total revenue and the lowest ticket price and also the number of tickets sold for the business class. Okay, so we can again do the same thing over here, and here we just need to replace average with sum, and then we just need to calculate the lowest ticket price, right? So we can use the min operator and also the total number of tickets sold. So we can use the count and then pass in the amount. So we select from the ticket flights table and then we put a where over here and specify the column name. Okay, where conditions, right? So where fare underscore conditions is equal to business. Okay, and give this a run. Sorry, this should be single quotes, and as I told you, it shouldn't be double quotes. So now if I run this, I get the sum, the minimum value, and the total number of tickets sold for fare conditions, that is business. Okay, I hope you are able to solve these two questions. So if you want, you can also provide some aliases if you want. So I guess that's easy, you can do it. So now let's move ahead. So now that we have understood the aggregation functions, let us now understand how do we group data. Let's say for every fare condition, I need to calculate the total amount. So that has been for this fare condition, that is business. Okay, so I need to calculate the total amount and also for comfort and all other fare conditions that we have. Okay, so for that we can use the group by clause. Okay, so basically group by is used to group aggregations by specific columns. Okay, so based on this column I want to group okay, how much amount is there for this category, for this category, all of that. Okay, so this time we select fair conditions and also the amount, okay? And then we calculate the sum of the amount. Okay, so we say sum and then pass in amount, and here we just put a group by clause. Okay, so we want to group by the fair conditions, right? So we pass in the column name over here. Once I do this and I run this, you see that for every fair condition, business, comfort and economy, so this is the sum, this is the total amount. Okay, so that we just calculated over here. So for business it has about 55 something, this is a big number, I can't count, and for same for comfort and economy. Okay, so this is how I can use the group by. Okay, so let's say I want to calculate the how many number of flights are there in business, comfort and economy. So I can use the count over here and then pass in the all the rows basically. Okay, so I have like about 1 lakh rows for business and 17 for comfort and 9,20,000 for economy. Okay, so we can just play around a lot with this group by. So we can just group based on a particular column and then perform some aggregation methods on that, like count to find the sum, what is the minimum, maximum. So I hope you get the idea. So group by is not only limited to one column, I can also group by many columns as well. Let's say I also want to group by the flight ID. So basically what I meant to say is, so for every flight ID and for every fair condition in that flight ID, what is the, like we can perform some aggregation on this amount. Okay, so we can also separate this by a comma and pass in the flight ID like this, and also make sure that you add this within the select statement as well. So this is flight ID. So now if I run this, you see that for flight ID 13873 for business class, I get one count. So there is one flight based on this. Okay, so based on many combinations basically. So you see that there are a lot of rows, like 34,000 rows. So based on the number of columns you group by, the number of rows also keeps on increasing, right? It would also make sense to sort based on this count. Okay, so let me just order this by the count star. So basically this one, if I want, I gotta also put an alias there. So you see that now I have the count sorted over here. So this makes more sense. And also if I want, I can do the same for fair conditions or flight ID as well, because it will all be jumbled up. So it is always after we group by, we order this by something. Okay, so also once I group by, so I'll have one set of data available, right? Let's say I want to filter out the data after I group them. So for that I cannot use the where over here, so this will give us an error. So where is usually done before grouping. Okay, so after we group, we have different set of data. So for that we use the having keyword. Okay, so having and then put our condition over there. So let's say we want the count to be greater than 100 or 1000, let's say greater than, let's say 100, and give this a run. So sorry, this having should come before the order by, and now you see that I get all the rows that are having a count of at least 100. Okay, so this is how you can filter out based on the group by, and also it would make sense to order them by. Okay, also I can add another condition here where having flight ID that is greater than let's say 1000. Okay, so that would even give us lesser records. So you see it, or let's say 10,000, and give this a run. So you see that we are getting 762 rows. Okay, so to be honest, we can do a lot of stuff in here. Okay, so this is just not even 10% which I just taught you. You can just play around, just try to analyze just by using these keywords. Even though if you get some errors, you can just solve why I'm getting this error. Okay, so because of this, so this is how we actually learn, right? So nobody's perfect, so every developer has been there. So now I just have a challenge for you where you can, I'll just provide you the two questions related to the seat table this time. Okay, so these are the two questions: how many seats are available for each fair condition and for each aircraft. Okay, so this is related to the seats table which we have over here. So you can perform queries in the seats table and not here in the ticket flights table. Find the total number of seats for each aircraft and identify the aircraft with the most number of seats. Okay, so you can just pause this video and try this on your own. So let me just get started. So let us select all from seats table just to have a look. Okay, so we have three columns here. So they are asking how many seats are available for each fair condition on each aircraft. So we need to group by these two columns, aircraft code and the fair conditions. Okay, so let's group by aircraft code and the fair conditions. Okay, so we also need to select them from this. Okay, so if I just run this, it will give us an error, right? So it must appear within the group by clause, so that should be used in an aggregation function, right? So let us include them as well, and along with this we also need to calculate the number of seats, right? So we can just do a count star, so basically to count everything. So now if I run this, so I get all these records. Okay, it would also make sense if I sort this. So let us sort by the count, so order by, and now I run this. So you see that for the aircraft code 733, for example, for the business fare condition, we have 12 seats. Okay, so like that we have 17 rows. Okay, so we have 17 combinations of them. So this is the question that we have solved. Okay, so I hope you are able to solve this. Let's now move to the second one. Find the total number of seats for each aircraft and identify the aircraft with the most seats. So let us first grab this, and here we don't need the fare conditions, we just need the aircraft code, which we are grouping by. So we can put a group by the aircraft code, so this one basically. So let me just comment this out. And so yeah, we are having 9 aircrafts, and this is the count for all of them. So we just need to return the one which is having the most number of seats. So we can just order them by the count star, and here we just need to sort this by descending order, right? So we can use the descending, and here we just need to return the first row from there. So we can use the limit and just the first row. So now if I run this, so you see that this is the aircraft code, that is 773, and this is the aircraft which is having most number of seats. Okay, so if I just remove this limit and just check, so you see that 773 is having the highest count. So this is the challenge. These are the 2 questions. So I hope you are able to solve them. So if you are not, just try to rewatch this video and just try to understand this before you go on to the next video. Okay, so let us now understand how can we use the substring function. So let's say if I only want to get the characters from, let's say for example, index 2 to index 4. So I can get that by using the substring function. So I cannot use the left or the right functions that would only either start from the beginning of the string or from the end of the string. So if I want to grab the letters from the middle of the string, so I can use the substring function. So we can specify substring like this, and then we just need to pass in few things. And first we pass in the column name, that is passenger name, and apart from this we also need to specify the range from where we want to grab the substring. So for that we start with from, and then specify the index of the character, let's say 2, and the last one is we need to use for, and then specify the index that we want to end, let's say 4. So now if I run this, you see that I get, so let me also print the passenger name, and now we see that we start from the index 2. So this starts from 1 2 and then it goes up to 4 characters. Okay, so the 4th character is not E but it's R. Okay, because when we want to end a character, so we that is going to be 0 based, so it starts from 0 1 2 3 and then 4. But when we want to start with a character, so that is just from 1 and 2 over here. Okay, so that's how it is in SQL. So the second character is A, so VA, so that's what it starts from, and the ending is 4, so that is 0 1 2 3 and then 4, so it ends over here. Okay, so this is how you can grab a substring from a particular string. So for example, the passenger name. Also, instead of just by hard coding this, I can also use the position method as we learnt previously. So this I can make it dynamic. So let's say I want to grab the position of, let's say, A, and use single quotes A in the column name, that is passenger name. So basically it ends with wherever it finds A. Okay, so once I run this, you see that, so I start from the second character, that is A, and it ends with the position which is A, so that is also 2. So as I told, for the ending substring, so that would always add 1 to that, so that is why we are getting L instead of A itself. Okay, so I hope you got the point. So if I see this example, so it starts with V, and wherever it finds A, so that's where it ends. Okay, so this is how it's mostly used with position. So instead of just hard coding values, you can also make this dynamic. Okay, so that's how you can use substring and position together. So here's a challenge for you: extract only the date from the scheduled departure for example, we have this timestamp over here. Okay, so if I want to only grab the date, so it is just the 10. Okay, and we can only use the substring function for this. Okay, so you can just try this on your own. So meanwhile, I'll just start with the solution. So basically there's other functions also which I didn't cover, which I'll cover after this, where you can just grab the day or the date from the particular timestamp. Okay, so which I'll come to that. So for now, let's just use the substring method. So we select substring and specify the column name scheduled departure, which is this, and over here we need to specify the range, so that starts with and ends with. Okay, so we need to start. We can also do this dynamically, so we can search for the position. So by the way, there are multiple dashes over here, so we can't do that. So we can just use the from and then specify the index from where it has to get the substring. So that starts from 1 2 3 4 5 6 7 8, and it has to start from 8 and then the next two, so that is 10. So we use the for and then 10. So now let us have a look at the timestamp column that we have, like for example the book date. Okay, so let's play around with it. So we have the extract function which we can apply on timestamps. Okay, so let's say I want to get the year from the timestamp. So I can just specify the extract function and specify the what do we actually want, like suppose for example the year and then the column name. Okay, so let us replace this with the extract function, extract, and then we specify two values. One is what do we want from the timestamp, so let's say for example the year, so and then the column name, so from book date. Okay, so if I run this, I will only get the year from the actual timestamp, and of course I can also give it an alias. Okay, so you can just say year from book date as you want. So and also I can extract other values as well. So let me also include the book date so that I can have a comparison side by side. And let's say I want to grab the month, I can also grab the day and also time. So whatever the format you want, you can just grab that. Okay, so let's say I want to grab the month, so I say month like this and I get the month. You see that this is the month. Then we have a day. Okay, so if I do a day, so we get all the days, and also I can do the same for time as well. So I can extract the hour like this, so it need not have to be uppercase, so you can even put it in lowercase as well. So I can just also get the minutes and give this a run, so I get only the minutes, and also I can do the same for seconds. So there are a lot of things mentioned in the documentation. You too can have a look from there. So we have a lot of field values which you can have a look from the documentation, and of course you don't have to remember all of these field values. So whenever you want, like some requirement comes, so you don't know what exactly is the field value to use, so you can of course refer the documentation and not everything to memorize. Okay, so even the experts by far even refer the documentation is what I believe. So we can extract a lot many things. We can also extract the week. We can let's say only want the time zone from the timestamp and do whatever we want with it. So we can do quarter, and it will specify which quarter is it in. So July comes under third quarter, so this specify the quarter, and also we can specify the week like this, and we get the week. Okay, so which week is this particular date actually? So out of 52 weeks, this is the week. Okay, so we can do a lot many stuff. So this is the use of the extract function which we can apply on timestamps. Okay, so now let's say I want to count which is the month which is having the most number of bookings. Okay, so for that I can use the aggregation function called count along with the extract. So let me extract the month, and here I can also make a count. Okay, so I can count all, and then we can group by, right? So as we learned, so we can group by this extract, and of course we can give this an alias like the month. So I have set this to book month booked, and also give this num bookings. So I can just group by this alias as well. So group by month booked, and also I can order them, order by the count, basically this num bookings, and then I can sort them by descending order. So now I will get the number of tickets that are booked in the particular month from the descending order, and I will get the count of that. So if I run this, forgot to give a comma here, and so we need to get rid of this book date because we are using aggregation, so that has to appear in the group by clause. So just as the error is being explained. So now if I run this, so we see that month number 7, that is July, has the most number of bookings, that is 1,66,000 bookings, and August has 88,000 and June has 7,000. Okay, so this is a simple problem that we solved by using the extract from timestamps from the book date. Okay, so I hope this is clear. Let's now understand the toChar function or toChar function. So this toChar function converts a timestamp to a given string. So just as I've used here, toChar takes in two arguments. One is the column name, and then what format do we want to convert the timestamp to a string. So I specified the day followed by month and then the year. So just as we see over here, the column that we have retrieved, so this gives us the day, so that is Wednesday, and then the month, that is July, and then the year. Okay, so that is whichever year it is. So this will convert the number to a string, okay, from the timestamp. So this is the use of the toChar function. And of course, just as from the documentation, there are a lot of formats which we can use, which you can just have a look over here. So for example, suppose I want the year with a comma separated, then I can specify in this format. And also if I want month all capitalized, then I can use all capital months. And if I want just the starting letter capitalized, you can just customize this however you want. Okay, just by having a look at the pattern from any one of the documentation which you can, and you can just specify based on that. So there are a lot of values which you can just have a look and implement them. So over here I have used a capital D followed by A and Y, so that makes the first letter capital. So if I just make this small, that gets small as you see over here. So you can just customize based on your needs. Okay, so this is the actual use of the toChar function. Okay, so now let's take the previous example itself, and instead of using the extract, I can use the toChar function and then specify the format that I want to use. Okay, so I still want to use from the book date column, and then I need to specify the actual format that I want. So I can just refer the documentation. So which format do I want? So I have specified the format month followed by years and separated them by white space. So you see that we are getting the month and the year as well. Okay, so I don't know why there are three white spaces, but it should still be one white space. I'm not sure about that. So yeah, we are still getting the actual format that we wanted in. Okay, so that is the use of the toChar function. Now let us explore more about timestamps and intervals. So if I want to get the current timestamp at the point I'm recording this video, I can use the current timestamp keyword. So current underscore timestamp. Okay, so this will fetch the current timestamp at this particular moment. So this is exactly the time when I'm recording this video. This is actually the timestamp. So what is an interval, by the way? So the difference between two timestamps is called as the interval. So if I just subtract this timestamp minus, let's say, the book date, which is also another timestamp, so I can just say book underscore date, and I need to specify the column name, sorry, the table name, that is bookings. And if I now see, if I get an interval type this time. Okay, so that is the actual time when the ticket was booked until now when I'm recording this video. So these many days have passed along with the time and the milliseconds. And also we can apply the extract and toChar function for an interval as well. So let's say I want to get only the day from the actual interval, so I can use the extract day from the interval. So the difference between two timestamps, so I get the days. So how many days have passed from the ticket that was booked until now. Okay, so that makes sense. And yeah, we can explore a lot within this timestamps, and you can also refer the documentation as here as well. Also I can use the toChar function, so basically to extract the string version of the timestamp, or even you can do it for interval as well. So toChar, and specify, first comes this the interval and then the timestamp, okay, or the interval. So let's say I want to get the day, so day like this. Intervals are not tied to specific calendar dates. Sorry, this has to be just dd. So I'm just extracting the day, right? So I get like this in the days, so number of days. So I can also append the number of, like, the string of, let's say, hours. So make sure this is single quotes. Okay, so this is for concatenation, and if I run this, so yeah, even though there's no error, sometimes that error comes. I have to just play this again, so that will actually work. So actually I was thinking what would have actually gone wrong. So this has happened many times with me. So sometimes even if your code is right, you will get some error over here. So that time you can just try to rerun this and that will work. Okay, so you get there's many hours, sorry, this should be days, and I get confused sometimes. So yeah, So we can just separate them by a white space and we can concatenate the string called days. Okay, so this is how you can use intervals in conjunction with extract and toChar. Okay, so now it's the time for a challenge. So the question one is, which is a month which has the most number of flights scheduled? Okay, so this is related to the flights table. So you can go to the flights table and try to solve this question, and then we have the retrieve flight numbers and their scheduled departure dates formatted as this Monday 1st January 2024, for example. So we need to format this in this particular format. Okay, so the third one is retrieve flights where the actual duration was greater than 5 hours. So you can just try solving this on your own. So after you solve this, you can just have a look at the solution. Okay, so let's try to solve the first question, which is a month which has the most number of flights scheduled. So let us select we can use the extract just as we saw in that example. So and then we can pass in the month, and then from the column name, that is what was the column name, that is scheduled departures, right? So we want the count as well, so count star, and we can just give this an alias saying month from scheduled departures. So we can say scheduled month, and then give this an alias as num flights. Okay, and select the table name, that is flights, and then we can give this a run. So this is departure, and sorry, this should be just scheduled departure, and now we can use the group by the scheduled month, and then we want to order by the count. Okay, the num flights, and we want to order them by descending order. So let's specify descending, and now if we give this a run, so we see that August, the month 8, has the most number of flights that are scheduled. Okay, then followed by July, that is 8,600, and then September, that is month 9, with 7,500. Okay, so the first problem is solved. So let's now move to the second problem. So retrieve all the flights and scheduled departure dates formatted as in this format. First, let's select the flight number. We can use the toChar function. So to convert a timestamp to a character, toChar, and then first we need to specify the column names, and then separate that by a comma and specify the format. Okay, so the format is day, and then dd dash month, and then year, like this, month. And so we need the month in capital, so the first letter capital, so capital M, and then the year 2024, and then we get the day, which the first letter is capital, and separated them by a comma and a white space. Okay, and let's specify the table name, so flights, and now if I run this, so you see that I get in the format. I don't know why is this extra white space, and so we get the flight number along with the scheduled departure in this format. So Sunday, comma, then the first is the date, then month, and then the year. So that's what we are getting over here. So maybe while uploading data there was a white space, I guess, so that's why we are getting here. So not a problem. If we know how to implement such a feature, then that's fine. So this is not in our control. So now let's go to the final challenge, and maybe I can copy this and I can just edit from here itself. So we select the flight number, and this time we want the interval, right? So the difference between the actual duration. So if I do a select star from flights, so I need the difference between the actual departure and the actual arrival. So these are the last two columns. So let's specify them here. So I'm going to get rid of this. Need to calculate the actual arrival and then the actual departure. So we need to calculate the difference between them. So actual arrival, and then subtract that to the actual departure, and then we need to give this an alias, let's say flight duration. Okay, and then we need to filter out those that are less than 5 hours interval, right? So we only need those flights that are greater than 5 hours. So we can specify where, and this actual arrival minus actual departure is greater than a particular interval. So to specify interval, we use a keyword called interval, and then we specify the interval here. So we want 5 hours, So make sure this is a valid interval and only then will it pass. So let's run this, and sorry, this should come after from. Okay, so we see that we get all the flights that are having a flight duration greater than 5. You see all of them are greater than 5. Okay, so these are all about the timestamps and intervals and how can we apply functions to them, like the extract and toChar. And now let's move on to the next section. So now let's learn about mathematical operations that we can do in SQL. So just as in any other programming language, we can perform some mathematical operations like addition, subtraction, multiplication, division. The same we can also perform in SQL as well. SQL itself is a programming language, and of course we can do some operations there. So for example, I can just do select, let's say 2 plus 2, and I should be getting 4 over here. Okay, so these are the mathematical operations which you can do. We can also do the same for subtraction and for multiplication and also for division as well. You get the idea, right? So we can, just as in any other programming language where it has all the other functions as well as the operators which they use, we can also use the same in SQL as well. So I just want to show you something. If I just try to divide, let's say 5 by 2, and if I just see the result, I get 2. Okay, because I'm dividing an integer by an integer. Okay, so if I just divide a numeric value, like let's say 5.0 divided by 2, so this time I get a a numeric value, you see over here. So that is 2.500, and of course we can just round this off, okay, by using the round function. And yeah, based on what we are dividing, so that's the result that we are going to get. Okay, and also we can calculate the modulo. So basically, if I can see what is the remainder if I divide 16 by 5, so the remainder should be 1, right? So that's the modulo operator. And also I can calculate the we have the exponential operator. So if I want to calculate 2 to the power of, let's say 3, so where is that, and I get 8. Okay, and we are not just limited to mathematical operators. We can also use functions like to round a value, which we have already used previously. Okay, so there are all other mathematical functions which we can use, and of course you can refer the documentation. So here's the documentation on mathematical functions, which gives us many functions which we can use based on our requirement. For example, we have the absolute, which will calculate the absolute value. So if it is -10, it gives us the value 10. And also we can calculate the floor and the ceiling values. So basically to floor a value and to seal a value. So for example, if it is 10.6, it rounds to 10. Along with that, we can calculate the exponential of a number. We can also calculate the log of a number. Okay, and also we can do a lot many things, like you can just round off the number. So this function which we were previously using as well. And yeah, so you can just have a look. And of course, again I say, nobody has to remember all of these functions. So if you have any requirement, you can just come to this documentation and refer which function do we actually want to use for our use case. Okay, so now let's go ahead and use some of the most popular ones that we might come across while solving problems. So let's say we want to round off a value. So we have already seen how can we round off a value. So if I just apply that function, it rounds off to just 1. Okay, so if I can also use the floor and the seal values. So I can just say floor, and again this need not have to be in uppercase, so it is case sensitive. So it will take the floor value of this, which is again 1. So if I take the seal value, so this will just round off to the next value, so that is 2, right? So we get 2 over here. So these are basic ones you might already know, which I don't have to explain much. And apart from this, I can also calculate the absolute value, which I showed. So we can, let's say if I have a value, let's say -10, so this gets converted to the absolute value, that is 10. Okay, and we can also calculate the factorial of a number, so which is factorial of, let's say 10. So we should be able to get it's about like 36. Let me just reduce this to 5, and we should get 120. Okay, so we can just explore all other functions that we have, and then we can calculate the square root of a number. So if I calculate the square root of 3, so I should be able to get something like 1.7. Okay, I can also use the random function, which will just generate a random value, and I just don't have to pass in anything. Random. So this will just generate a random value. So anytime I play this, it's going to give me a random value. Okay, so I can just multiply or divide with this random value, and based on at what range do I want the random values, I can just do that. You get the idea, right? So within the ticket flights table, we have the amount column, right, which we can perform some mathematical operations. For example, so let's say I want to increase all the amount by 10% due to inflation. So this can happen. So let's say I select the amount, so amount, and I can just rename this as old amount, or I can just say older amount, anything. So then we can also calculate the newer amount. So I can just perform the mathematical operation on this amount. So I can just multiply that by 1.1 to increase that by 10%, and I can just rename this as new amount like this. And let's also select the ticket number. Okay, and now if I run this, so you see that alongside the old amount I also get the new amount, which is 10% increased by the old amount. Okay, so here I have 3 decimal places, so I just want to round this off to 2 decimal places. So I can use the round function just as we learned previously. So, and let's pass in 2 over here. Okay, so this will get rounded off to 2. There you go. And in case if we have any decimal places, so in this case we do not have, so we can just use the floor or the ceil methods in order to round off values. So we can just wrap this entire thing within floor or ceil and then round off to a particular value. Okay, so this is the math functions which we can use. So now let's try to solve a challenge which will actually deal with math functions. So here's the question: assume a 15% discount on ticket prices. So we need to retrieve the ticket number and the original price as well as the discounted price, and we need to ensure that it is flowed after 2 decimal places. Okay, it's similar to the one which we saw previously. So you can just try this on your own, and I'm just going to try to solve this question. So I'm just going to select, and first is the ticket number, then we have is the original price, so that is the amount. We can rename this to the original price, and then we need to multiply that by 0.85. basically if you want to calculate the 15% discount on that, so we can say amount multiply that by 0.85, and we can give this an alias of discounted price, ticket flights. Okay, so if I give this a run, so the original price was 42,000 and after discount it is 35,000. Okay, so with a 15% discount, and just as I told, we need to floor the value, and of course it doesn't make sense to floor because all the decimal places are after 0. So we can anyways do it. We can just say floor, and we can get rid of all the decimal places, and if I give this a run, we now get without the decimal places. Okay, so this solves the challenge of this. So I hope you were able to do this. It's a very simple one. So now let's explore more advanced mathematical expressions that we can perform in SQL. So now let us learn about conditional statements. Okay, so just as in any other programming language, we have like kind of if else blocks, right? So if one condition passed, then it will return another value. So then it goes to the next block if that condition is not satisfied. So basically we have case statements, okay, or another alternative of using the if else statements. So that syntax is also supported in SQL. So let's say for example, I have this amount column where I just want to categorize this amount into high, medium and low prices. Okay, so let's say if all the prices are above 40,000, then I just want to set that, create another column and set that to high. So if it is like let's say less than 30,000, then that is medium, and if it is like less than 20,000, then it is low price. Okay, so to do that, we can first of all start by selecting the amount, and then we can just use the case statement. Okay, so we can just specify case over here, and then we need to specify our condition within the when keyword. Okay, so when, and select the column name, that is amount. We need to put a condition over here, so that if that is greater than or equal to let's say 40,000, so this will return true or false value, and we just need to check if this condition is true, then we just want to return a value. So what is that value? To return the value we use then. Okay, so then we specify within a string, so let's say the price is high. Okay, so the price is high, and then if we want to, like, we can just duplicate this multiple times, and if the amount is, let's say, greater than let's say 20,000, then the price is, let's say, medium, and we can just put a default case over here as well, okay, where we can just specify else, okay, and then we can just set this to low. So if it is if these two conditions doesn't pass, then we can this will go to the else block and it will specify low. And finally we need to end, otherwise this will be keep continuing. Okay, so we just need to break this case and we can just say end, and over here we can just give a name of the column, otherwise it will be default like anything like case or something. So we can just specify this like, let's say, price category, like this, and yeah, from selecting the table name, that is ticket flights. So now let's run this. Sorry, this should be again that problem. Okay, so if everything, even the syntax is good, it still gives some error, so we just need to play that again. So now you see that along with the column I get the price category from here, and this gets categorized into those based on the amount. So if it is greater than 40,000 we get high, so if it is greater than 20,000 we get medium. So I need to change the spelling of this, and if it is less than 20,000 or by default it is set to low. Okay, so this is how you can specify the case statements, so based on certain conditions. So I hope this is clear. So here's a challenge for you. So for each flight in the flights table, we need to determine whether it was delayed or on time based on the scheduled and actual departure. So we just need to take the difference of them and we just need to check if they are delayed or on time. So basically if the actual departure is greater than the scheduled departure, then we set that to delayed. Otherwise we want to set the status to on time. Okay, so you can just try this on your own. So let's now try to solve this. First let us select the scheduled departure and the actual departure and also the flight number. So let us select flight underscore number, scheduled departure and the actual departure. Okay, so now we can just put our case statements. So we can just say case, and now we can just put a when and specify the condition over here where the actual departure is greater than the scheduled departure. Okay, so if this is true, then we just want to return let's say on time, sorry, delayed. All right, so basically if it is greater than the time that is scheduled, so then it's delayed, right? So then we just want to put in another case over here, or we can even put an else over here, and if this doesn't satisfy the condition, then we can just say on time, like this, and we can just of course don't forget to end the else block, sorry, the case block. So end, and we can just give this a name as status, flight status. Okay, and finally select the column name, that is flights. All right, and make sure that this is single quotes. So sorry for that, it's become a habit for me to write double quotes. So let's replace this with single quotes and now give this a run. Sorry, I forgot a comma here, and if I now run this, and also a comma here I guess, and this should not be in quotes, and now let's run this. So now we get the flight status. Okay, so if the actual departure is greater than scheduled departure, then it is on time, so we get null over here. So we also get null values. So also if you want, you can filter them out. So you see that over here where the actual departure is greater than scheduled one, so as you see over here, so it is delayed over here. Okay, so and yeah, mostly everything are delayed for some reason. So yeah, this is just like sample data, right? So there's always some uncertainty. So we get the flight status. So if you are able to solve this, then yeah, that's great. Now let us move on to another topic. So just as I told, there were a lot of null values from our actual departure, right? So let's say if I want to, if the value is null, I want to use the scheduled departure. Okay, so we can just use another operator in SQL called as COALESCE. Okay, so I can just get rid of everything, and here we can specify COALESCE. So COALESCE. So I have some problem in this, so it's a difficult word to pronounce. Anyway, so this will take in two values. So one is the, let's say, actual departure, and then we have the scheduled departure. Okay, so basically what this does is, if it has the value of actual departure, then it will return that value. If not, it will return the value from the scheduled departure. So for example, if I take this row number 1, so this value of actual departure is null, so that is why it will return the scheduled departure. Okay, so we can also give this column name as, let's say, our departure. Can just give anything, so just something came to my mind. So let's also select the table, and now if I run this, and yeah, of course this code shouldn't be there. Now if I run this, so you see that I get a column departure, and either it is actual departure or scheduled departure. So if I also select those columns just to prove that. Okay, so now if I give this a run, so we see that along the actual departure and scheduled departure, we always get any one of these values. So no value of the scheduled or just this departure is null. So you see that it has at least one value, at least if these two columns have at least one value which is present. So we need to remember that the type of these two columns should always be the same. So this is a type of timestamp with time zone, so this type also should be the same, otherwise it will give us an error. So I can just prove that. So if I can just say, like, let's say 0 by default, so it says that invalid input syntax for timestamp. Okay, so that's why we need to always use the same type. So if we want to, let's say, convert this to a type of, let's say, timestamp, so we can just wrap this within the cast function. So that will basically cast a value into whichever you want to convert it. Like, let's say if it is a number, then it will, if you specify that I want that to be in a form of a string, that will convert that. So let's say if I want to select, let's say, a string of 100, and I want to cast this to a number, so I can just wrap this within the cast function, and then I can just say as number, integer. And now if I run this, so you see that we get of the type integer. So 100 is converted to a integer. Okay, so let's say if this is a number and I want to convert this to a string, so I can just say text, and now if I run this, so we get in the form of text. Okay, so this is how you can cast a particular time or the type to another type. Okay, now let us use the cast function to convert this data type of timestamp to, let's say, varchar. Okay, so I can just wrap this within the cast function, and I can just convert that to a let's say varchar, like this. And now since this is a varchar, so this should actually work. So both the types will actually support. Okay, so now you see that this type is being changed to character varying, and all of this is being converted to 0, whichever the actual departure is having a null value. Okay, so now this has a value, so it will use the same value, but even this type will be of type character varying, and it won't be a timestamp. Okay, so that's the only drawback. So if you want a default value, we need to convert that to the type of the default value, and then use that, but that will also become character varying. Okay, so let us now learn more about this cast function. So if I go to the ticket flights table, if I see the ticket number, all of this is of the type character. Okay, so let's say if I want to convert this to a number, I can just say cast and specify the ticket number column, so ticket number, and I can just convert that to a, let's say, big int. So we have a large number, right? So we can just say big int. I can also give this a alias of, let's say, ticket number. Okay, so this will get converted to the type big int, and yeah, so this is the ticket number. We can also of course select all other columns as well. So this is an example where I just found useful to convert the column of ticket number, which was a character, to a number, which would make sense. So if I go to the tickets table where we have the column passenger ID, okay, so this is basically like a phone number, right? So I could convert this also to a number or a big int. Okay, so you see that this is not possible because we have a space. Okay, so if there is a space, then we cannot use that. So now if I just try to cast the passenger ID to a big int, so this will give us an error. So it says that this cannot be, this is an invalid input syntax because we have a space over here. So now to get rid of the space, we can use the replace function, basically to replace a value within a given string. So we can replace all of this wherever it has a white space to, let's say, an empty string. So let us use the replace function. So basically this will take in three values. One is the column name, that is passenger ID, and then what is the value that we want to replace, so that is an empty string, right? So and the third one is to replace with what, so that is an empty string. So now if I run this, so I get the passenger ID, you see that without any spaces. So again I can just now cast this to any type. Okay, so let's say a big int, so I can just wrap this within cast and then specify the type of that. You can just say as big int. So if I run this, this should work. So you see that this type has been converted to big int. Okay, so previously it was a varchar, so now it is converted to big int. So this is how you can use the replace. So basically specify the column name and then specify with what values do you want to replace that. Okay, so here's a challenge for you. So far what we have learned, so in the flights table, display a departure date for each flight. If the actual departure is available, then we need to use it, otherwise we need to fall back to the scheduled departure. So we have already seen this, you can just now try this on your own. And we have another condition here. So we need to convert the chosen timestamp to a text string and then replace all the dashes with slashes and in the resulting date string. So if I just so select star from flights, we have this timestamp, right, which is we have dashes over here, we need to replace them with a slash. Okay, so we have already learnt about the replace function along with the COALESCE and the cast function. So you can just use this in conjunction to solve this problem. Okay, so you can just go ahead. So I can just start by solving this. So let's first select the flight numbers and then we can use the COALESCE function, right, to use the actual departure, otherwise use the scheduled departure. So we can just use the COALESCE, I forget the spelling, and then use the actual departure. Okay, so we can follow this back to scheduled departure. Once this is done, we need to convert this type, right? So we cannot convert the timestamp to a text, so by replacing these dashes over here. So for that we need to convert that to a text. So let's wrap this within the cast function and let's specify the type as text, and then we can replace this column that we get. Okay, so this will return us the column, so we can just use the replace. So we specify the column as the first argument and the second one is what do we want to replace, so that is the dash, and then we can replace that with an slash. Okay, so we can also give this a alias as formatted departure. Okay, and then specify the table name, so that is flights. Okay, so now if I give this a run, you see that our dashes have been replaced with slashes, and yeah, so this is of the type text. Okay, so if we are having the actual departure, it is using that. If not, we are having the scheduled departure. So by this we do not have any null values. Okay, so I hope you were able to solve this using all of these functions that we newly learned. Okay, so yeah, so this is all about the mathematical operators which you can generally use in SQL. So now let's move ahead to learn yet another feature that we can use to communicate between different tables that we have using joins.